Hi there, I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Gothi of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I'd like to welcome you to Raving Reviews. This is a show where I go on and I review different kind of media, whether it be movies, video games, comic books, whatever, and I'll get on a kick for a little bit and be like, oh, I need to talk about this or I need to talk about that. And this is where I talk about those things within my particular heathen worldview context, and I'll let you guys in on some stuff where you see heathen elements in something that you expect and then areas that you don't, and kind of whatever just strikes my fancy at the time. So let's talk some about another video game, guys. Like I said a couple episodes back, I'm a huge gaming nerd. I love my video games, always have. And so I've played a lot of them over the years, and I've explored anything relating to Vikings or Norse mythology and stuff like that. And sometimes you come across some real gems, sometimes you come across some mediocre games, sometimes you come across some dogs. There was a gem back on, I got it on the 360. I know it was on, I think, multiple platforms, but I played it on the 360. I think it was on multiple platforms anyway. I don't remember. But it's called Viking Battle for Asgard. Now, this is an adventure hack and slash game with some light RPG elements. It was by Creative Assembly, which is the development team, and then it was published by Sega. And it was announced on August 21st of 2007 by Sega Europe and released in North America on March 25th. And in Europe on March 28th, both in 2008. So that gives you an idea. The game's about 11 years old at the time of this filming. And it's based on Norse mythology. There's a war going on in the realm of the gods. The Aesir war with Hel. Hel's been cast out of Asgard for defying Odin's rule. And she's got her risen army of undead Viking warriors that she is just laying waste with. And so it's all spilling over into the mortal realm of Midgard. And now you play as Sjerven, who is this Viking badass. He is a straight up just bad dude. Really, really cool kind of character. I dig him. And he is Freyja's champion. And with that, he's imbued with certain powers and things like that, kind of a demigod type status. And he's thrown into this war, and he's up against, the denizens of Helheim, and ultimately going up against, fighting Hel. Now, Hel's job in all of this is that she's angry because she's been cast out from the gods. She defied Odin's rule, and so now she's trying to free Fenris, and let Fenris loose on the unsuspecting world to trigger Ragnarok. So, quite the hissy fit. And it's kind of an interesting story. Obviously, it takes its cues from the Ragnarok lore and plays it out in the game. Now, the game itself, you follow behind the character in kind of an over-the-shoulder action sort of thing. Somewhat reminiscent of God of War in some elements, some Gears of War element to it as well. Creative Assembly's previous game of that style was Spartan Total Warrior. Never played that one. It was out in 2005, another hack and slash game. But you run around, it's basically, the world map consists of these 3 different islands on Midgard, and they're quest hubs after a fashion. It's kind of open realm as far as the island goes, but it's not like a big expansive open world type game. You run around these islands to your heart's content. You free Viking warriors that come back and lend aid to your camp. There's some light elements there as far as the camp side goes. I wouldn't say that it's like camp development kind of stuff. Keep in mind it's been forever ago that I actually played this game. It was new when I played it. So about 11 years ago. And so the gameplay style itself is fascinating. Like I said, it's a follow behind hack and slash. Dodging, slashing, moderate use of powers, just kind of some neat, fairly basic gaming there. There wasn't anything particularly innovative as far as the gameplay style goes, as far as the overall kind of user interface elements. It was all fairly basic. Now, aesthetically, it was kind of cool. Now, keep in mind, it was in the 360 back in 2008. So, graphically speaking, we're limited to a certain extent on what could be put out. But it wasn't a bad deal. I liked the world. It felt very cool, very neat, had very much some God of War elements to it as far as kind of stylistically. Gameplay flowed differently than God of War. So I'm not going to call it like a God of War clone, but it's definitely in that family, in that wheelhouse. And I loved the style of Skarn as the warrior, lots of dual wielding kind of stuff, a lot of slow down finishing move kind of things. When the action would get really rough, really cool, you'd get them stunned and then go in for a finishing move, and it would get gruesome, it would get gnarly and visceral. That was fun. I enjoyed that aspect of things. The running around and doing umpteen jillion quests got kind of tedious to me at most points. The storytelling wasn't extremely compelling, but it was interesting nonetheless. I loved the aesthetic of the game. I loved the look of the game. I loved kind of the style of the game. I had to have it. Got it. And played the dog out of it for a while. Never beat it. That should tell you something. I'm one of those guys that likes to play something through till I beat it. And it's one that I loved playing while I was playing it, but then I would lose interest and go on to something else, and then I would come back and be like, I really need to play this again, but it's been so long I can't remember exactly where I was, so I'm going to start over, and then I get lost again in it. And so I never really got to the ending of the game. Wanted to, but never really got there. So storytelling wise, it's kind of cool to see these things play out. I like the fact that the warrior is Freya's champion as opposed to being like Odin's champion or Thor's champion, something like that, because it's a little bit out of the ordinary. It's slightly off center from what you would normally see in a very kind of Brosa-true style of game. Heavy on the Viking aesthetic. So obviously we're not getting into earlier heathen kind of stuff. I wouldn't call it a heathen game. It's a Viking game. I mean, it's called Viking Battle for Asgard. So it's definitely told from the Norse mythology side of things. Very Norse-Icelandic in its approach. Accuracy-wise, meh. I mean, it takes its inspiration from the lore, but it is definitely its own story. It is definitely its own style. And, you know, it's kind of like some early Skyrim kind of elements, but don't try and compare it to Skyrim. They're nothing alike. The two games are very, very different. Yeah, I wouldn't go that route. But it's more akin to God of War than anything else, including the fact that this is one of the games where they jumped in and started using QuickTime reaction events. So QTR events were big in this game. You'd get through, and some of the bigger, like, big trolls, big giant bosses that you would fight, there was a big emphasis on the QTR, which I'm not a huge fan of QTR when it comes to gaming. Certain times, all right, yeah, cool, it's fine to include QTR. Most of the time I feel like QTR is forced in, especially during those early days when QTR was kind of new. Certain games did it really well. Certain games, it definitely felt shoehorned and kind of forced. And this is one of those games where I felt it was a little shoehorned. I felt it was a little forced, and it didn't flow as well for me. But in general, I didn't feel like this particular game flowed all that well to begin with anyway. It was a fun game. It was kind of innovative and different because, unlike some of the previous installations that we've talked about in RRR, the last of which being To Human, which was a stylized cyberpunk retelling, this is more of a traditional kind of fantasy-based retelling. This is full-on in the mythology. We're not trying to mix it with other genres. We're not trying to say, well, what if the Aesir were this, or what if they were this? We're not trying to throw a cyberpunk kind of veneer on things. This is straight up, you know, plop you down in Viking world and do Viking badass things. And so it was neat. It was fun because it had a little bit more of the purist side of the mythology element to it. As far as a deeper understanding of like heathen culture and Viking culture alone, no, not really. I mean, it's not like they're anthropologists going through and making a game. That would be boring. That would not be a great deal of fun. I do like to see more understanding, more nuanced understanding of the culture in games, where you see little things about the culture that a geek or some well-read heathen, a well-established, well-researched heathen would be like, oh, that is cool, I can't believe they put that in there, like I do with some of the anime that we talk about. This one was just straight up Viking veneer, and it went a place where the later edition of God of War went, but in its own way early on. It's got some similarity to Kingdoms of Amalur, but not a whole lot. And I really enjoyed the game. It was a lot of fun. Now I look at the platforms, it was on the PS3, Xbox 360, and on PC. So, I mean, it was available. It was out there. I'm sure you can still find a copy of it in a bargain bin somewhere. Do not pay top dollar for this game if you find it. It's not worth it. Even back in the day when it was fresh and new, it got middling reviews across the board. The gameplay was fine. The storytelling was kind of neat. It was innovative to see somebody go whole hog into the mythology and to really kind of, create a Viking-esque game that embraced the fantastic and the mythology things without trying to be too gritty, too realistic, or without being all, anti anything established religion mythology side of things. So it's fun. It's kind of ho-hum. It was there. It was neat. But as a kind of flagstone in kind of heathen gaming throughout the decades, I gotta call attention to it. It's one that I find to be one that's worthy of being aware of. So you can pretty much get what you need from it by going online and finding a video of gameplay, or going and looking at some of the graphics from some of the still shots that you get. The Wikipedia will give you a rundown of the story and stuff like that. I mean, there's not even really anything all that interesting to go into with regards to the studio. This was just another title that they put out, and ultimately, it had some RPG elements, and that you had skills that you purchased, combos that you extended through your EXP and things like that. So I mean, you could kind of customize your character, you could kind of level up, but there wasn't a whole lot of depth. But it was there. You had to go through and weaken the different enemies, and then go in and use killing moves and combo moves to help take them down, stuff like that. It was fun. So. It was very, very graphic in the violence, lots of dismemberment, things like that, heads and arms coming off kind of deal. There was some raiding kind of stuff you could do, where you could take the heroes that you had freed and you could raid other established settlements on the island that you were on, that kind of stuff. That's how you free some of the people that you go to these other camps and you sneak into their lumber mill areas and stuff like that, and you free the other Vikings and you take them back and they join your legion, things like that. So anyway, it's there, it's fun, it's neat, it's worth mentioning. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a must play. I wouldn't say that this is something that you absolutely have to go out and find, but it's a neat piece of gaming history that went under the radar for a lot of people because it wasn't a big AAA release. Yes, it was put out by Sega. Yes, it caught the headlines for a few people back in the day just simply because it was a game that said Vikings. So, those of us that were in the scene then grabbed it, looked at it, and most of us probably forgot that it was on the shelf, because while it was fun, it wasn't compelling enough really to drive through to completion. Now, some people will counter me because they enjoyed the aesthetic of it enough, or that was just simply what they were in the mood to play at the time and didn't get distracted with something else, and then played it through to completion. You guys are more than welcome to comment down below. I love these kind of walks down memory lane when it comes to the history of gaming. And it just wasn't one that caught my eye enough to... It caught my eye enough to buy it and play it. And not just rent it, but actually buy it and play it, because renting games used to be a thing. But it wasn't one that was enough for me to finish it. And it doesn't take a whole lot for me to want to finish a game. If I get into it and play it for a while, I'm probably going to see it through. I'm a bit of a completionist on that element of things, and I very much like to play something through to completion. And I'm one of those guys that I can't get distracted while I'm playing a particular game. I'm going to play it through, and that's what I'm playing at the moment. And when I'm done with it, I'll move on to whatever's next. If I'm not in the mood for a particular game, that's not what I'm going to play. I'm not going to stick on that one, most likely. And so if I try to play something at the wrong time, it may get shelved and never gone back to, simply because it puts a bad taste in my mouth for the game at the time, even though the only thing really wrong with it was that it was the wrong time for me, kind of thing. There's some fairly major titles out there that people will look at me and go like, oh, you never played that, or you never finished it? I'm like, wrong place, wrong time kind of thing, So anyway, it's a neat game. It's worth checking out. I highly recommend at least Googling it and taking a look at it so you can be aware of this piece of gaming history. If you're at a game exchange or some other reseller kind of thing and you see a copy in the bargain bin for the 360 and you still have a 360 hanging out, you might pick it up if you just want to have that kind of piece of gaming history. Is it a huge milestone in gaming history? No. Not in the slightest. I mean, as far as if you look at like just generalize the zeitgeist of gaming in the last couple of decades, not even a blip. Doesn't even show up. Most people are not even aware this game ever existed. But for those of us that are big into the Viking aesthetic, that enjoy anything that delves into the world of Vikings and whatnot, it's worth checking out. I mean, I think this was around the same time the Beowulf game came out on the 360. I'm trying to remember, because I played the Beowulf game too, and the Beowulf game was a straight up God of War knockoff. It was a straight up God of War clone, and it was fun, but being a clone, it was kind of janky. It didn't play as well as God of War, and so it was difficult to make it through. I played it all the way through, enjoyed it, but I think Viking Battle for Asgard in a lot of ways was a better game. As they definitely tried for a better approach. They went a direction I would rather have seen be successful than the Beowulf game, but it just didn't really take off because it was a great idea. It was kind of meh execution. So there you go, guys. I'm not going to ramble on anymore about this particular dead horse. Check it out if you want to. Again, that's Viking Battle for Asgard, put out by Sega. Creative Assembly was the development team on it. I played it on the 360. It was on the PS3. It was on Windows. I don't know if it's had any kind of re-release, resurgence in the years following that. I seriously doubt it. This isn't one that's going to catch anybody's eye and be like, oh, we need to bring this back. We're going to get into things like For Honor and whatnot, where they're going to go a different route with the Viking-style combat integrated with other things, as opposed to seeing them try and rebirth this particular game just simply because it didn't make that big a splash. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you appreciate these reviews. If you like them, please leave comments below. If you played this game and you had an experience that either mirrored mine or differed from it, whatever, let me know down below. Jump on the Facebook page, check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like these reviews? Do you want me to keep going? Do you want to see more stuff kind of from the weird annals of history? Do you want to see more modern stuff? What do you guys want to see? I do know that a lot of people have asked me to review God of War, the new God of War with the whole Viking aesthetic and everything like that. I have not played the new God of War. I am familiar with it. I have looked into it. I have some issues with God of War as far as its overall story approach. I have a hard time fighting the gods, as it were. I get thematically and story-wise why it plays out the way it does, but I don't know, God of War's never really been my thing. I like it as an engine. I like it as a gameplay style, like with the elements that are brought in for like Viking Battle for Asgard and stuff like that. But I love the aesthetic of the new one. I love the look of it. I love how beautiful it is. I love the nuanced understanding of Viking culture that they bring in. I mean, it looks cool from the surface. I just haven't taken the time to sit down and play it. I know some things about the story on it that make me a little less than enthusiastic to jump off into it, although I know that it's one that I will end up playing. It's just not high enough on my priority list to really chase after it at the moment. Plus, I have like zero time to sit in front of my PlayStation and play. I haven't turned it on in months. I play on my Switch almost exclusively now, simply because of time. I can play it on the go while I'm out and about versus, I say that because my Switch is sitting right next to me. I can play it on the go when I'm like smoking a cigar or something like that, versus my PS4 where I've got to be plugged in front of my TV, and that's just not what I have time for at the moment. So anyway, let me know what you guys want to see. Let me know if you enjoy these videos, and I will keep cranking them out. We may take a break from the video games for just a little bit and delve off into another medium. I may bounce back to movies. I may go over to comics. I may go to movies. I don't know yet. We'll see. I got all kinds of stuff that I want to talk about, that I enjoy, that I want to share with you guys. So thank you guys. Hail, and may your hearth fires burn bright.